I had an interesting moment with my son. Um, there's a lot of times when I bring these practices into our home, not because, it's not like I'm forcing them on you. You got to practice meditation. You got to sit for 15 minutes and think about nothing. No. Um, but I, um, he was having a hard time falling asleep and was kind of tossing and turning. It was a little hot, tossing and turning, and sort of like doing these like grunts almost. I don't know if you have kids or you've ever tried to put them to sleep, but like, come on, dude, you're keeping yourself up. All this. I'm not tired. I'm not tired. Um. Anyways, so I was like, this can happen. You feel like you're not tired, but it's your bedtime, and there are ways to try to relax your mind. And what are you thinking about? Nothing. Like you gotta be thinking about. Gotta be something, right? You gotta be thinking. Are you like rehashing your day? And I was like, look, irregardless, he probably didn't want to go into what he was thinking about. I was like, okay, let's focus on your breath. Let's just focus on your breath, right? And I said, if you have a hard time focusing on your breath, but first take two or three deep breaths, focus on your breath, and notice where you feel your breath in your body, right? Just pay attention to that. And I'm like, and if you can, and then I'm like, okay, now breathe regularly. And if you can, when you're breathing, as you breathe in and out regularly, now just extend the exhale. Just consciously extend the exhale. And I could hear him actually kind of doing it, which is kind of cool. And what's amazing is literally in like 2, maybe 3 minutes of doing this exercise, he started snoring. And I actually told him the next day. He didn't recognize. I actually told him the next day. I was like, you remember you were tossing and yes. Do you remember how you fell asleep? No, I don't really remember. I was like, oh, because it was such a short period of time. And I was like, as soon as you focused on your breath, your whole mind and body started to relax. And he was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. And so now we're joking now. And I say, extend the exhale. So because that's kind of one of the things that I was having him focus on in his unconscious state of falling asleep. I was just saying, okay, now if you can, just extend the exhale, extend the exhale, extend the exhale. And the extend the exhale, ETE, is now a code. We have a code now where I say ETE, and let's say he's like on the pitcher's mound or something like that, and I can tell he's getting frustrated by, it's sort of like maybe his defense isn't helping or something like that. Even if he's frustrated with his like teammates, or if he's frustrated with like his performance, pitching or something like that, I just yell out ETE. So it's ETE, extend the exhale, which I think is actually pretty cool. So that happened. Actually Thursday night, which was neat. And then we kind of used it. And went into it over the weekend. ETE, and now it's a thing. Pretty soon you'll see shirts with it. I'm just kidding. ETE, extend the exhale. Yeah, so so it's sort of like how we determine, how we use these practices for ourselves, how we can even help others with these practices if we notice anything, right? And very simple things, right? Like extending the exhale. So somebody gave me this book on meditations, or it's J. Krishnamurti. I'm going to kind of read these because sometimes, with some of these enlightened beings, I don't know if you've ever read any of Krishnamurti's stuff. It's quite good. I remember the first book I read of his was when I was doing my PhD. And it was quite profound. I found it to be very good. His most well-known is called Freedom from the Known. Freedom from the Known, if you've ever read that. If you're interested in it, I highly recommend starting there. But what I love about these is literally they're like 50-word jewels. They're like 50-word jewels of information. A meditative mind is silent. It is not the silence which thought can conceive of. It is not the silence of a still evening. It is the silence when thought, with all its images, its words and perceptions, has entirely ceased. This meditative mind is the religious mind, the religion that is not touched by churches, the temples, or chants. This religious mind, the meditative mind, is the explosion of love. It is this love that knows no separation. To it, far is near. It is not the one or the many, but rather the state of love in which all division ceases. Like beauty, it is not of the measure of words. From this silence alone, the meditative mind acts. Wowzers. So, that stillness, right? It's not that like thoughts don't appear. It's that we're not really paying attention to them. We're not really giving them as much energy, because thoughts may appear in awareness, but we just may not attach to them or really pay attention to them as much. What happens then when we don't give them our attention, there's sort of a quieting of the thought. And like, what's to appear? Right? And so many of you may have had experiences like this, where maybe you're paying attention to your thoughts, and in a very good, deep state of meditation, you actually recognize that the frequency of your thoughts has significantly decreased. And when they appear, they're not having the same impact as they would have even at the beginning of our meditation practice. That when we're 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes in, it's sort of like they come and then it's almost like, it's like they're trying to get energy. And that's where we have the choice. That's where we actually do have the power to direct our attention to where we wish to direct it to. And if we just choose not to direct our attention to that, or to give it energy, right? Attention is equivalent to energy. So it's sort of like a thought is coming, and when we pay attention to it, we're essentially plugging that thought into our nervous system. Bzz. Give it energy, and then what happens to it? It starts to grow, starts to hang out, right? Starts to sort of do its thing. That thought then triggers another thought, another thought, another thought, another thought, because we plugged it in. We plugged in. All right. And so if we see that as energy, right? If we see it as energy, and we see it as our attention actually being energy, like our attention is actually the source of this energy, and it can go and it can really expand things. It can't our attention, just like what we were talking about before, in terms of, you know, the super worst case scenario mind, right? It's like if I place my attention on, oh my goodness, my dog's going to die, I'm going to find 1,000 reasons in that moment why my dog's going to die. It's panting more than it was. It's salivating. It's drool. The color of the drool looks a little different. It's moving strangely. It's looking at me with cross-eyed. Whatever it is, it's like we sort of make these things up almost. So the silencing of the mind, it's not like we're doing it, right? If we try to force it, it's really difficult. In fact, we might actually cause more suffering. So if we're like no thought, right? It's not no thought, it's the silence. So it's a bit different. It's sort of like the resting of attention as opposed to having no thought. Or so when you silence something, imagine that, you know, you're playing a loudspeaker and you just turn the volume down. And we actually can do that in our practice. And the volume is our attention. And so what we're doing is we're just not placing attention on the thoughts that are arising. If we notice that the thoughts are grabbing our attention, right, and pulling it, we can be aware of that and simply say, oh, wow, that thought really got me. Got me. Right? Imagine like there's Velcro, like a thought appears and there's Velcro on the thought, and our attention is the other side of the Velcro. And so here this thought appears and our attention is the other side of the Velcro. And some thoughts have got more Velcro on it. And when they come and they hit our attention, it's sort of like, oh, that's hard. That's really sticky. And other thoughts are sort of like, oh, right. And so the Velcro hits, but it doesn't really form a nice tight bond. And so it doesn't grab our attention. So some thoughts, we all know those, right? And we have those triggers. Those repetitive thoughts are the thing that we're kind of dealing with or coping with. It's like, there's that thought again. And it grabs and it pulls your attention. And next thing you know, you're down good old memory lane there, or fear lane, or, you know, whatever, you know, panic lane, or whatever lane you want to call it. Right? And it's like, that thought got me again. Every time we recognize that, it's sort of like recognizing how tight the Velcro attaches. It's like, that got me again. Okay, my Velcro. And it's not anything that I judge myself on. I just notice it, right? Oh, wow, that thought really got me. There's the Velcro. And I just noticed that, okay, that thought, now let me try to come back to my anchor, my resource, whatever it might be. And every time that I notice that my Velcro is really tight or really, really attached to something, that moment actually can slightly decrease the stickiness of the Velcro. Every time we do that, it's almost like, we're gonna decrease the Velcro by like 1%. Every time we kind of bring it back. And you may notice that with the practice, you get much better at doing that. And then the same thought that triggered you maybe 3 months ago now just sort of comes up, and it's like, the Velcro just isn't as tight. It's not as tight. When the Velcro isn't tight with all of our thoughts, now there's sort of a silence, as the energy isn't going towards paying attention to the thoughts. The energy is resting, sort of like turning down the volume. The frequency of thoughts will decrease because we're not giving energy to this manifestation. And now we enter into silence. Okay, but we're not stopping thought. It's not like we stop it or say, I can't have any thoughts. And anytime you have a thought, you like hit yourself because you did something bad. It's not that's not it, right? Oh my God, there's a thought. Oh my God, that would actually be funny. I would have a very bruised face if that was the situation. This meditative mind, which he calls silence, is the explosion of love. With no separation, it's neither far nor near,